Good evening, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So good to be back on again for my second live stream of the new year. And I'm really happy to have my new friend, Alex Bowers, on this evening to talk with us about his work and about the Legion and Legion Mag and all kinds of other stuff. Alex is a freelance writer and historian based in Nova Scotia who loves digging into the stories that shape Canada's past. He's written for Legion Magazine and many other history focused publications. You'll see them in the description below. Often he's exploring people, artifacts, and moments that keep our collective memory alive. Originally from the UK, he brings a fresh set of eyes to Canadian history, blending curiosity, empathy, and a knack for finding the human angle in every story. And Alex, I'm so happy to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm honored to be the second one for this new year.
Yeah, well, this is a little odd for me to start out so slow, actually, with
Oh, yeah?
live streams. I used to do sometimes, well, during the pandemic, I did like 4 a week sometimes. And to
Okay.
be like, oh, it's the second one and it's the 19th of the month. It's like
Yeah,
I'm on a vacation.
year's getting away from you, man.
I know. The older I get, the slower I am. I guess that's what it is.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm happy to have you on here, my friend. I've been wanting to do this for a while, since we linked up digitally, and I started to read your work and started to admire your work in Legion Mag and look at how you tell stories. I knew I wanted to have you on because you're a natural storyteller, and I really am interested in this crossover with freelance work and freelance journalism and going into to dipping your toe in the history field with a lot of this stuff where you're basically 2 feet in when it comes to that now. But that initial dipping of the toe is what I'm really intrigued by. So I'm sure we'll go over that as the evening progresses. I do want to thank everybody who's already in the chat. Thank you so much for being here. Norma already says that you look eerie, Alex.
I look eerie. Yeah, I've got the lighting isn't very great in here, so yeah, okay. I'm just going for some moody lighting in here, and I'm not sure it's doing me any favors, but it's too late now.
It's fine. It's fine. I'm not complaining as long as there's no echo, and you know, as long as I don't look too pale, I'm happy.
Hey, you look great. We both look great. We're all fine.
Yeah, we'll be fine.
But yeah, no, yeah. So I've been as you say, like I've been in this industry for a little while now. Like I started writing for Canadian military history. Well, I started writing Canadian military history about over 10 years now. When I was back in the UK, it was kind of a combination of two passions sort of coming together. I had always loved history growing up. It was, you know, I remember my dad would put on all the World War II documentaries on you know, the television, and I was that strange kid that would actually sit down and watch his dad's documentaries. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, my passion for history started at an early age, and then it was my love for Canada too. My mum came out here in the 70s. She told me all the stories. I grew up with her stories. I came out here in 2014 for the first time. And I just remember going to Halifax, and I remember learning about the Halifax explosion for the first time. And I just thought to myself, the greatest human-made explosion prior to the atomic bomb detonations. And it was the first time I'd ever heard about that. And I found that was extraordinary. And the more I dug into Canadian history, the more I realized that there are so many extraordinary stories out there that are just not getting told. And that's certainly that was certainly the case from the UK, where I felt like there was always this this notion that Britain stood alone in the Second World War until the Americans arrived, which of course is it's not true. Right. And I think from that moment onwards, I realized that I wanted to highlight Canada's role in and contributions, wartime contributions, and I suppose the rest is history.
Yeah. So you came back multiple times before you decided to come over the pond, if you will. What were those experiences like when you were coming back? How do you remember the first experience through coming back and having the second or third experience?
Yeah, no. So, well, like I say, I fell in love with the country, but I fell in love with Nova Scotia specifically the first time. When I came back, I was basically coming back every other year for the longest time. Always just dipping my toes in, always learning something different, always going somewhere different around the province, and around predominantly the Maritimes at the time. So yeah, no, I just felt like I was just building on this love and this passion as I slowly came through. And then I think we came to the pandemic happened, and my wife and we just sort of embraced this "you only live once" mentality off the back of that. And we just decided, you know what? Why are we visiting every other year when we could be here every year? You know, every day. So we're sort of very much big believers in just throwing out these things into the universe and seeing what happens. And we just applied for temporary visas, and we got them surprisingly quickly. And then we came over here in February of all months, February 2023. And at that time, I was still a freelance writer, writing for predominantly British publications. And I did that for several months until an opportunity came to be a staff writer with Leisure magazine. And it sounded like the dream job. And it has been. It really has been. I get paid to do what I love. I get to tell these stories to Canadians, to highlight their own stories. Because I feel like, I think it's no secret that there have been occasions where Canadians have not always excelled at telling their own stories, their own wartime stories. So I'd like to think that I'm doing my own small part in helping to bring those to greater attention within Leisure magazine.
Was it the visiting Canada that was the thing that propelled you to want to tell Canadian stories, or was it
Definitely.
visiting Canada mixed with reading some authors from Canada or who focused on Canada, or
Okay, yeah.
did that open up later?
It's kind of well, this is where Tim Cook comes into the equation, frankly. By this point, I had visited Canada. I had started to dip my toes into Canadian history, but I think I remember getting my first Tim Cook book for Christmas from my father-in-law down in Cornwall in the UK. And I was just curious because it was like a comprehensive account, the necessary war, his comprehensive account of Canada's Second World War from 1939 to 1943. And I fell in love with the way that he told a story. Like he would tell the overarching story in such a fascinating and engaging way, but he would touch on that human aspect of it. You know, it wasn't just talking about plotting grids and just the big broad picture of the battlefield. We're talking about human beings on the ground experiencing the cold faces of war, as they say. And that really resonated with me, that way of being able to tell that overarching story through the eyes of individuals. And I think I've tried to replicate that in my own work wherever possible, really highlighting that human experience.
Yeah, definitely. I was so surprised when we went on World War II TV when he had the memorial live stream for Tim. You were on at a separate time than I was, but I was watching the chat and I saw too many people who said they never read his books. And or some people even said I never heard of Tim Cook, which was fascinating to me. But it might also underscore this idea of Canadian history being overlooked in Britain or Belgium or France or wherever.
Yeah.
And
less so in the Netherlands.
less so in Netherlands. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting to me that now these folks can have that aha moment or that early student moment where they're introduced to such a great writer, and maybe that can compel them to want to write themselves or think different ways. And it's no surprise that he did that for you. He did it for me, for Canadian history. And I'm sure there are people watching this now or who will be watching it that feel the same way about it, about that accessibility and that authenticity.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was just been an inspiration throughout my career. I was so honored to have the opportunity to interview him quite a few times actually. You know, initially for British magazines, but then for Leisure magazine as well. And he was just one of these wonderfully kind people that he was genuinely interested in your career and your life. And like, he'd always spare a moment to just check in with you, and it wasn't like he was just going through the motions. Like, he really cared. So yeah, I've always been so inspired by him, and I was devastated when obviously he passed away of last year.
Yeah. And we just spoke before we went live for everyone in the chat. I do have a link to the Legion magazine in the chat. It's pinned to the chat here on YouTube. You'll see right on the front page, if you will, of the website. Right in the center is Tim Cook's final article for Legion Mag that was completed in his stead. He had someone else who edited it. Could you you'd probably tell that better than I can, Alex, because you're part of Legion Mag, but Tim Cook's final piece is in there and it's fantastic.
Yeah. So yeah, he had the opportunity, like he was basically working until almost right until the end. He had a deadline due with Leisure magazine on the Monday. He passed away on the Saturday, I believe, and he'd already made arrangements for someone else to finish the piece. And I just think that it just stands testament to his dedication to his work, his passion, that he had. You know, he must have known at this point, you know, I don't have much longer on this planet, but he wanted to see through that deadline. What can you say? What can you say other than just what an extraordinary man?
Yep, absolutely.
Man. Yeah.
Anyone who's watching on TV as well, because I know some of you like to put it up on your television and see my face on a big screen, which is kind of odd. I do have that on a QR code as well. So if you go to the QR code, scan that on your device. You can go to Legion Mag and check out all that stuff. I'll let it up there for a moment while we're speaking. One thing that I've really wanted to ask you, Alex, and it's kind of a general question about your work. How has freelancing, which has a mix of freedom and yet a little uncertainty, or maybe a lot of uncertainty at times, shaped the way you approach a story, or perhaps how you choose a subject?
Okay, so just to clarify, I'm no longer a freelancer for Leisure magazine, but when I was a freelancer, it certainly comes with its challenges. A lot of pitching, a lot of rejections. So yeah, that it can be a frustrating thing. But so your question was how
did you navigate that? How did that shape your approach to how you choose a subject or how you tell a story? How do you think outside the box sometimes with that? Because when you're doing freelance work, you're not being issued a story. You're pitching these stories, and you're saying, "Why is this important right now?" Or "Why should we talk about this right now?" What goes into that kind of mentality? Because you did it so much before going full time with the Legion magazine, if you will.
I think I learned the art of an angle. I think that's so critical. It's a case of not only just saying, "Oh, I think we should run this story because I think it's interesting." As you say, it's a case of how do you time it with milestones? How does it relate to the world today, and what comparisons can you draw? I think those are the sorts of aspects where you really got to hone your skills and your pitching ability, your elevator pitches, if you will. And that definitely is a challenge. But yeah, I think that's probably the best way I'd be able to explain it anyway.
You talked about Tim and the way he wrote and how it's impacted you, and it's that human element with these kinds of histories and these kinds of stories. What's your process for finding that human thread that kind of ties everything together? What do you look for in a story when it comes to these, if you will, human interest stories in some ways, where we're getting down to the personal level? What do you think are some things that you kind of look for to uncover that?
I think kind of that, again, another good question. It's very much, I want to be able to explore the chaos, the horror, the sometimes the camaraderie, these aspects that I think just translate so well when you're reading firsthand accounts. I think there's such an important place for academic pieces that sort of look at these things like from set piece battles and stuff like that. But I think for readers to understand, short of physically experiencing conflict, you have to see it through the eyes of an individual. I truly believe that. One of the features that I wrote recently was last month about the Christmas, all the different Christmases that Canadian soldiers of the Second World War had experienced. And I'd opened it with each year. I sort of opened it with a different individual on what their experiences were. Like I opened it, the entire piece with an infantryman in Hong Kong, just before the fall of Hong Kong. He's asked to carry out this suicidal mission in the final hours before the surrender. Somehow he survives to be taken prisoner and spends the rest of the years in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. But he writes of the mundane things as well in the lead up to that. He writes about having his Christmas dinner consisting of bully beef and hardtack washed down with water. And there's those sorts of things that you think doesn't immediately explain like the nature of conflict, but equally I feel like it just gives you that human element that just sometimes the mundane in that sort of environment, it could be jarring, but I think it's also important to highlight those things. And I carry on with talking about a different soldier in Ortona, that infamous Canadian Battle of the Second World War. He was an organist, and he brought his music sheets from Canada for some unknown reason, and he was just playing the organ in this bombed-out church in Ortona amidst all this devastation and destruction, while his comrades eat pork chop and mashed potato with a side of cigarettes for whatever reason. I suppose those were the days. But I just think it's those sorts of aspects that really resonate with me, and I hope that they resonate with people who read my pieces too.
They resonate with me because I remember doing battlefield tours or doing educational programs, and I barely talked about tactics. I talked about when they were hungry or when they were missing home or something like that, because your audience can connect with that easier than moving a division or something.
Sometimes it's the things you don't see as well. I think that could be important. I think I talked about that guy from at the beginning of the Hong Kong. I bring him back at the end of the story. He managed to survive his experience in these Japanese prisoner of war camps. He's en route on a train bound for Toronto. He gets picked up by his aunt and uncle, who are basically his mother and father to him. And they go home for like an early Christmas. It's a week before Christmas. They decide to tuck into a Christmas dinner. But I sort of end the piece with him. This is all based on fact. Like, these are all his own first-hand accounts. He just excused himself from the dinner table. He went to his bedroom that he hadn't seen in, so many years. And I sort of left it there because I just thought to myself, what was that like? What was that like to close the door behind you and just look at that room you've not seen for that many years? And you must have been able to see like a different version of yourself, perhaps an innocence that you aspire to find once more. Whether they found it is another question because of all the complexities and everything they endured. But it was just those sorts of things where you just makes you think, what was that like? What was that like? And yeah, that's what I mean when I say just leaving some things unsaid. I think that's important too. Letting the reader make up their own mind.
Yeah, using the imagination to picture that individual in their bedroom and thinking of that. It's a great way of letting the reader, think of things and formulate their own thoughts and minds
absolutely.
and such.
I'd like to think I do.
Yeah. It paints a picture. It's very artistic.
Yeah.
In that way. And
absolutely. Yeah, so that's definitely the way I try and approach these sorts of topics. It's, you know, I feel like what I do as a journalist first, and you know, who writes history, is I think my work could be complementary to a lot of what historians do. You know, I think it's not a case of there ain't enough. You know, there's no room. What is the Western thing they say? There ain't no room in this town for the both of us, or
Yeah.
whatever. I
Yeah.
don't think it's anything like that. I think these, like, we can coexist, we can be complementary to one another's work.
Mhm.
I think,
Mhm.
yeah, I
Mhm.
believe that. I believe that.
I found that that's a very American thing.
Mm,
I found as an American moving to Canada that there's a lot more collaboration
mm,
up here. There is room in this town for both of us, if you will,
yes. Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
because maybe we're telling the same story, but we're telling it in completely different ways.
Exactly.
And I think that's
Exactly.
a beautiful thing to
Mhm,
have in the
mhm,
long run. When you're having these kinds of conversations with people that you're interviewing, or you're going to a place, or you see an object, Alex, is has there ever been a moment that like you think, okay, this is exactly why I do what I do? Like something that is like there was a light bulb moment or anything like that, because you've come from across the ocean to be here.
mm.
We're both immigrants to this country, and
Yeah.
sometimes you're kind of like, this is the moment where I fit in, or this is the moment where I'm going to make this work, or this is going to work. This is the story.
I don't think there's any one particular thing. I think it's just been the reception that I've received,
Mm,
um, and the way that I think I feel like I belong because people have told me how much they value the fact that I'm doing this, and the stories that I'm telling. Um, that goes a long way for me. That really goes a long way for me. You know, I think um, I've always struggled with imposter syndrome.
mm,
Uh, you know, even now, even writing as a staff writer for Leisure magazine, I still struggle with imposter syndrome. So to know that people appreciate what I do, and yeah, I've just there's just been moment. I'm just trying to think of just any if there's any one particular moment where I'm think about. There is one though. I recently wrote a piece about Fern Blodgett Sunder, who was this extraordinary woman. She was the first Canadian to be a wireless operator at sea during the Second World War. She ended up serving on a Norwegian ship of all of them because they
mm,
would actually permit women on board. Um, and she sailed 78 of the ship's 96 transatlantic voyages.
wow.
Um, and when I was researching this story, I was just uh, sort of reaching out to different sources and different places for information, and I'd sort of got a good relationship with uh, the Norwegian Embassy of Canada, as one does, because I'd written about Norwegian Canadian stories in the past, and I reached out to them and I told them the story that I was telling, and they just fell over themselves to assist me, and
Mm,
they sent me this beautiful book on her life that I wish I had it to hand to show you. I don't think I've got it immediately available to me, but um, it was just a visually stunning book, and the story within it was amazing too. And it was just that moment that I just remember having that book to hand and thinking, wow, like people are going out their way to help me, and it just
mm,
I don't know, it was a gratifying experience, I guess.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, you hit on imposter syndrome, and
yeah, yeah,
as someone who's going to get a PhD, it doesn't matter what education level you're at or
yeah,
what you're doing. Imposter syndrome is real, no matter what,
yeah.
and it happens. Norma says, "I don't think imposter syndrome is a bad thing. It keeps us
Mm,
humble and careful in our work." And I tend to agree with that. Although sometimes it can be like, "What am I doing here? What is going
yes.
on?"
I think there's a level of imposter syndrome where it can be beneficial. I agree with Norma wholeheartedly, for the record.
Mhm,
But when you let it consume you, I think that's when it becomes a difficult thing, you know.
mhm, mhm,
Um, but yeah, no, it's right. It keeps you humble. That's absolutely true. And yeah, it definitely ensures that you really work hard to hone your skills and make sure you're telling the story accurately. You know, I think journalists have a bad rap, obviously, for accuracy in some regards. I like to think that I'm very careful with my fact checking and all the work that I do because of that. Part of that's the reason I'm so. But obviously, it's just so critical that you get these facts straight, and the story that you're telling is conveyed as appropriately as it possibly can be.
We spoke a bit about Tim Cook and his influence. You also spoke with another great Canadian author, and that's Ted Barris. Uh, what was it like speaking with Ted Barris about his work? Because I remember interviewing him in 2019, and I was just like, "Wow, okay, this is a different playing field now."
Oh, he's so interesting. I love Ted Barris. He's such a great character as well. I've had the opportunity to speak to him a couple of times now. Most recently, I spoke to him about this stranger than fiction story known as Operation Fish, which was during the Second World War, because it was based on his book, The Battle of the Atlantic, that he wrote, Gauntlet to Victory. He'd written this section in that when I was reading his work, and I was like, what? And it's basically this notion that when it looked like Britain was about to get invaded, Churchill made the decision to send the UK's entire gold reserves to Canada so he could basically carry on the war effort there if needed. And he just, you transported all this gold was transported on ships across the Atlantic during the Battle of the Atlantic. And you just think how much of a daunting experience that must have been for the ship's captain and the sailors. What would have happened if that had been sunk? You can't even fathom, really. Would have that been the end of the war for the UK? I don't know. But the way that Ted tells these stories, he's such a great storyteller. I'm envious of the way he tells a story, both in print, but also when you speak to him, he's just so... he can convey himself. Here I am struggling. He can just verbalize he's so great at explaining these stories both in print and through speaking, I guess. Yeah, it's great.
Do you, Alex, do you read as much as you write? Because I've heard a lot of people who are authors and who are journalists and others who say they have to read to keep the prose going in their head and to keep their own kind of literary voice going in their head. What are some of the things that you've been reading or have really taken you to a new depth of historical perspective lately?
Yeah, so I do read a lot. I absolutely read a lot. I think that the book that I've most recently read was Romeo Dallaire's The Peace. I had the opportunity to interview Romeo Dallaire earlier today, which was an extraordinary honor. But when you were afforded the opportunity to do the research and when you're going to be speaking to the authors of these books and you're afforded the opportunity to read them like for work, I'm sitting here in my office hours, sitting here reading a book, and it's okay because I'm working. That's super cool. So I think that's such a critical component with what I do, is to keep reading, to keep challenging yourself as well. With different topics, keeping it interesting.
Do you read a lot? Do you read a lot of fiction?
I do read a lot of fiction, actually. The way that I tend to do it is I have one non-fiction book on the go and one fiction, because I think I'm also acutely aware of burnout. And I think the issue being that because I love my job, but I also, this is like a passion for me in my spare time too, that sometimes those two things sort of blur. So sometimes I have to tell myself, okay, you've done enough military history for one day, maybe go and read a book, a fantasy book or something like that. Just give yourself 5 minutes. Yeah. Are you much of a fiction reader yourself?
I'm not much of a fiction reader, but what I try to do is I read my history components because I have to, because I get books sent to me by publishers. And so I read and review for that, or I have the authors on. So that keeps me busy. So my escape from that is usually I like to read, like, it's going to sound, weird, but I like to read like media theory.
Okay.
And I like
Yeah.
to read
Yeah.
how theorists, like French theorists from the 80s, who are talking about how we consume media and how we.
Mm,
That's really interesting to me because I've been a content creator for over 10 years, so I want to
yeah.
know how people consume what
Yeah.
I do, which is why now I have 2 blogs and I have all this other stuff because one's history and one is media.
Yeah.
That's my cognitive exercise. So I've tried to do fiction. I remember reading fiction when I was a kid,
Yeah.
but I don't know if I just grew out of it or something. I do love a
Yeah.
good like a good graphic novel or
Yeah.
something like that. I do love that, but just sitting down like reading Stephen King is not going to happen with me.
That's fair. I mean, to be fair, for what it's worth, oftentimes I said I read fantasy every now and again, but often I'm reading something like a sharp novel or like a military history
Mhm.
adjacent fiction book. I don't know if
Yeah.
that really counts about escaping it, but hey, it's still a story, right?
Right, right. You don't have to remember all the facts and figures in those
Exactly.
stories, right?
Exactly. Yeah. There's fewer statistics in those sorts of books.
That's true.
Yeah.
Uh, Growing up in the UK, you saw how everyone or a lot of people over there saw the past. You saw the historical memory of a event, and
Mhm.
obviously, it's not in a vacuum. Everyone has a different historical memory about an event, or
Mhm.
they have a cultural memory about an event. Um, were there any differences you saw when you came to Canada and how an event was remembered compared to how maybe it was remembered in the UK, or ways in which it's memorialized or thought of?
I think I think it goes back to, again, to what I was saying about when I read Tim Cook's book, The Fight for History, and him talking about Canadians have sometimes struggled to tell their own story. They're getting better, and I'm happy to say that they are.
Mm,
Um, I think what I was surprised about here when I came out here is there were instances where I felt like I felt like the UK was definitely better at memorializing and commemorating these things. I don't know if that's sort of born into this the myths that we've created in the UK surrounding like again this Britain alone notion or just the Churchillian
mm,
uh, sort of mentality that we've embraced in so many aspects that is just permeated in so many different facets of society and life that I think it's uh, we are so defined by the Second World War in so many ways in the UK. Um, I question whether or not that's the case over here. I think I'm seeing people, as I say, doing a better job at commemorating. Um, but I do think, yeah, it can be a struggle, and I think I would like to see Canadians being louder and prouder within the, not too nationalistic, but
right.
just it's okay to talk about your history. It's okay to have your voice out there and tell these have the highlight these contributions because they're so important.
Mhm.
Um, I'd love to see more Canadians connect with their history, um, all fact like all elements of it, both the complex aspects of the history. We need to be talking about all the things that we Canadians got wrong as well. Um, but I'd like to see that happening more in schools. I'd like to just see that happening more in public discourse everywhere. I
Mhm.
think it's cliche, but you learn from the past, and I think people need to have a better grasp of where Canada's come from to understand where we're going.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, as I said to everybody in the chat, remember Legion Mag is the magazine is pinned in the chat, so it's at the very top of the chat. You can't miss it.
Mm.
Head on over there. That opens me up to this question, Alex. It's the 100th anniversary of the Legion this year.
Mm.
And what are your thoughts on that? What are you hearing behind the scenes about how people are considering
Well,
it, thinking about it? What's going on there with the magazine or in other people's lives who are working with the Legion?
yeah, no, I think it's such an incredible, fascinating and important milestone. I'm honored to to be here. I mean, how many magazines can say that they've been, lasted a century? There's can't be that many anyway. But also the Royal Canadian Legion overall as a separate entity. There's definitely going to be a lot of commemorative events over the coming year. There's commemorative coins that are being released. There's definitely going to be further events along the ways. It's such an honor to have. even if not directly, because Legion magazine is a separate entity, as I say, to the Royal Canadian Legion, but to still have, by nature of association, a connection to the extraordinary role that the Royal Canadian Legion has played in supporting veterans and military personnel. I'm so pleased to have, be a part of this, and yeah, to celebrate that century of service.
Yeah, I remember the first time I walked into a Legion. As an American, you just can't walk into a Legion in America. You have to be a member.
Yeah.
And so I was like, "Does my membership come over here, or what goes on?" They're like, "No, we're open to the public." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's very Canadian. That's nice of you."
Yep.
You know?
It is very Canadian. That's a very good way of putting it.
And
Yeah.
there's usually a little mini museum in there
Yes.
of local artifacts, which I really enjoy as a public historian, being able to go in and be like, how do you display your stuff, and what's here, and what's the local
Yeah.
history. So it's almost like each Legion is a little mini museum, and
Absolutely.
I've always enjoyed that.
You've piqued my curiosity now. So how would you say that it compares to the American Legions?
Well, the American Legions are, you like I say, unless they're having a public event, they're usually for members only. We would have some artifacts on display, maybe down the corridor somewhere. There might be something on display.
Yeah.
Usually there's a World War I era field gun that was captured, or there's there's another American field gun that was there or something. But the overall aesthetic of the Legion in the United States is different, because it's not like a mini museum. It's more like a social club only. And the Legion here is like a social club, but it's more like also a place where you can come and you can see some of the history from the local people. And I've always admired that as a public historian a little bit more, because not only can I walk in and get a good cup of coffee, but I can also, look around and see artifacts and see photos of people who were members of the Legion who have passed on, but they served in Dieppe, or they were, at Ortona. And it's like, it brings that history local, which I wrote a few years ago for Defining Moments Canada, that all history is local. I was thinking about those Legions, and that really piqued my interest in Canadian history as a teenager walking into their first Canadian Legion and being like, am I allowed to come inside or not? Actually met an amazing Canadian submariner who was bartending, and he was just a little guy, short guy, and he's like, oh yeah, that's my uniform over there in the case. And so I got to see his uniform, and he talked about like being in the Canadian Navy during the Cold War, and how they docked in Cuba. And he looked at me and he goes, yeah, we had a different relationship with the Cubans than you did. And that opened up new discussions, right? Discussions I would have never have had in the American Legion. So that was really a great learning moment.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. For the record, I hope you can forgive me for throwing questions your way as well. I'm so used to the dynamic where I'm the one that's the interviewer.
It's fine. It's fine.
Great stuff.
It doesn't make me uncomfortable. It's okay.
Awesome. No, what you were saying about like getting the opportunity to talk to like veterans and stuff like that, that's definitely one of the highlights for me of writing for the magazine. I'm hoping in the next couple of years that I'm going to be afforded the opportunity to speak to a lot of Second World War veterans, because I think the plan as it stands right now is we'd like to create a book at Legion magazine highlighting the last Canadian Second World War veterans. We're now at a minute to midnight with our Second World War generation. I think it's so important that we highlight their stories. And the guys that I've spoken to, like they're so lovely. And as you like, similar to your experience with speaking to that Cold War veteran, they just oftentimes, if you get them on the right day and on the right topic, they love the opportunity to speak to people about these sorts of things, right?
I think it helps too, because they see young people who are interested. It's not like their kids' generation. It's now their great grandkids generation who's really like, oh, we want to know, all this stuff. I think that's a huge factor in it.
That's so true. I think that's so important. Yeah. Like you say, when I can't imagine what it must be when, like a young guy, like a young kid, just comes up to a veteran and asks what they did. Yeah, it must be so gratifying, and just to see that preservation of their legacies is carrying forth into the next generation. I'd like to see more of that. I'd
Yeah.
like to see more of that.
Yeah. Well, you're definitely helping with that, Alex.
Thank you. I
it's
appreciate that.
fantastic. What is happening now in the magazine for you? I saw that you had just said to some others in your personal sphere that you had some great work coming out soon, or it's dropping soon, or it has dropped with the magazine. I'd love for you to be able to talk about that.
Yeah, great. So the biggest thing that I've done of late was to write my own special issue magazine on Canada and the Victoria Cross, which will be coming out at the end of this month, I think, or the beginning of next month anyway. That was such a huge undertaking. It was not my first one. I had written one before on the liberation of the Netherlands the year before. But this one, I was very much, again, sort of embracing that human perspective and trying to tell the stories from those who either were the recipients or were witnesses to these Victoria Cross earning recipients. And that was such an incredible experience to dig into these individual stories and highlight them in their own way. So that's definitely the biggest thing that I've done of late, 100%. But there's so many different things that I'm covering at the moment. It's going to be a busy year for me.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. As a writer, that's got to feel amazing.
Oh yeah, from all those years of rejection to suddenly, like, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to squeeze this all into the space of 365 days. It's quite a good turnaround. I'm not complaining by any stretch of the imagination.
I've found that it's a lot like running a business, in that there are years where it is dry, and then there's years where you can't keep up. Is that how you felt with it? Because you've had you feel like you're going off the cliff, and then all of a sudden there's another peak.
So much. It's like, I feel like freelancers in particular, there's two types of stress that you experience. There's either the stress of having too much work or the stress of having not enough. And I can't quite decide which one. Actually, no, I'm lying. I know which one I think if I had to pick, I'd rather the stress of having too much work. Yeah. Because at least you've got the work, right?
Right. You can get groceries.
Yeah, you can get groceries. Exactly. You've got a roof over your head. So,
right.
But I remember that as a freelancer, it was, it's not fun. Don't recommend. But it's just part and parcel of getting to where I got it. It's just you've got to jump through a few hoops to make it work.
Right. Yeah, that's something I'm experiencing right now. Yeah. Trying to get out there and get some publications going. Yeah. And you hit that wall, and I hear some others, my cohort, hitting that wall, and you got to keep telling yourself, sooner or later you'll break through it, and it'll be fine. And I'm so happy to see that you're inundated now with work
in the best possible way. Yeah, exactly. I've got this year I'm going to France, hopefully to my first time ever going to the Vimy Memorial. It's a strange thing when you've got these things on your doorstep, and I didn't really take advantage of it at the time. And now I'm gonna hopefully get the opportunity to go over and see the Vimy Ridge Memorial, and hopefully see Juno Beach as well for the first time. And then I've got a few other events. I'm going to be covering Remembrance Day in Ottawa in November. It seems crazy to be just speaking about it now, but in the world of magazine writing, you've got to think several months in advance. Sure. So we're already making plans for we're already making plans for next year, let alone this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, what month are you going to Europe?
It's the end of March, early April.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. It's well timed with
it's a good time. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I'm heading over in May. So
oh, no kidding.
Oh, yeah, cool. I'm heading over for my first visit to Vimy in May. So
oh, no way. Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to get those permanent residency points up.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, that will help. That will help.
Yeah, exactly. But no, maybe I love Ottawa during Remembrance Day ceremonies. It's very moving, and I believe that's where I went to my first Remembrance Day, was Ottawa. And it's a very special event, and it just seems like it's the center of things happening in that moment, and it's just incredible. And that's not to take away from the small town in Canada. It's 500 people, and they are
No,
going out because at that
they're
moment,
different.
that area is the center of the universe for those people. And
I
it's
think they're both very profound in a very different way. Like this year, the way that the nature of how it works with Legion magazine, that I would probably be covering the National Remembrance Day service like every other year, and then the years in between, I normally go to a small town one. So last year I went to Oromocto in New Brunswick to see how a military town pauses to remember service and sacrifice. And again, that was moving in its own way. You know, it's so much smaller, unsurprisingly so, but it's still got it's, you're still seeing that same sort of dedication to remembering those as you would in Ottawa, right?
Right. Yeah. Maybe we'll run into each other if I'm there.
Hey, you never know. I like that. I'd like that. That'd be cool.
Yeah, that'd be
Go
awesome.
and have a cup of coffee or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you don't want tea? Is that it? Or
but this is where I have to hand in my British card. I'd pick a coffee over tea any day.
attaboy. That's how we do it.
It's a good thing I want to apply for permanent residency.
I guarantee you won't go back. Sheldrake, welcome in, my friend. Those Legion special issues are great for battlefield tours. I bought half a dozen for my clients to read on the bus between stops. Very professionally done.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, no, we've got such a great team that does that do them. Like we normally release 4 a year. So it was it was an honor to do the Liberation in the Netherlands one last year, and I understand that a couple of battlefield tour guides did take them and pass them out, and that was such an honor. So that it does mean a lot when people say things like that. So thank you.
Yeah, I was looking forward to asking you what you're looking forward to in the future, but you already hinted at some of that.
No, busy day.
Yeah, and you're looking into 27, which is just crazy because
crazy
26.
I know.
But there's a lot happening in 27. I mean, you know, it's another anniversary of Vimy, and it's all kinds of. Is that how you have to look at being in the magazine business? Is you have to be like, okay, here's a big anniversary coming, or okay.
It often helps. It definitely often helps. I mean, for example, the reason that we are thinking about 2027 is because of Vimy. I'm probably going to be writing a special issue on Vimy for 2027. It definitely helps. It definitely helps. I think if you frame these things according to big milestones, I think it resonates more oftentimes. I think I think it's a crucial aspect of it for sure.
Yeah. So what are some pointers as we wrap up here? What are some pointers or thoughts that you would have for someone who's trying to either become a freelance writer or to get into a magazine or get a good magazine gig or something like that? Writers out there in general who are just like, I want to try this. I want to see what this is about.
Persevere. Don't be put off by rejection. I think it's just what you have to deal with in this line of work. Stephen King famously, I think he used to keep like all his rejection letters, and he just had them sort of in a pile almost. Even Stephen King gets rejected, or at least did once upon a time. Right. I think perseverance, persistence, be unafraid to make a nuisance of yourself sometimes, but do it politely. But be a nuisance politely. I think that would be a good way of framing it. And just I know it sounds really lame, but just don't give up. Like, I think if you've got a passion for something like that, and hone your skills, and you don't feel like I've made it because this is my style now. Keep improving, keep working on it. Those would be some of the message, like what I would say to aspiring writers and journalists for sure.
Well, I know I need that in my DMs from time to time, where it's just like, keep going, keep trying.
Keep going, man. You will get there. I believe in you. I promise.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm middle-aged now, so something's gonna happen sooner or later.
We'll figure it out. Yeah,
we'll figure it out as we go.
Yeah.
For everyone here, thank you for hanging out with us this evening. Again, I want to point out in the chat that we do have a link to the Legion magazine, direct link to the website, and also this QR code up here that I put up in case some of you are watching on a television or on your laptop or anything like that. You can scan that, and that will take you right to the Legion Mag website. So that, and I'll have it down in the description of this video if you're watching later, so that you can be a part of the action there with Legion Mag. But Alex, this has been so great to have you on, my friend. I really appreciate your time and all of your insights and wisdom as far as writing.
I don't have a wisdom. I'll have to take your word for it on that one.
Hey, it's fine. It's fine.
No, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for tolerating this socially awkward, tongue-tied, self-deprecating Englishman. I appreciate it.
I think that's why we get along. We're both self-deprecating.
Yep, that works. Normally that goes far in a friendship. I like it.
Yes, exactly. If I can pick on myself before someone can pick on me.
Exactly. Yeah, I like
that. Thank you again to everybody who joined us this evening. Greatly appreciate each of you. I know that many of you said you were going to watch the video later because of time, but I know that a lot of you do watch after we wrap up. So thank you for watching. Please remember, I got to say it, you got to like and subscribe to the channel. It's free to do so. And greatly thankful for all of my members, all 2 of you. Thank you so much for supporting for me here on the channel. And again, Alex, thank you so much for your time, my friend.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Keep reading, everybody. Keep learning. I'll talk to you very soon.